Welcome to South Florida saltwater fishing. I'm Heath, and it's time to get into the bite.
Dolphin in the boat, baby!
You having fun?
Nice sailfish on a white bucktail jig. And we're almost like that! That's a rosie right there, man.
Alright folks, welcome to the Beginner's Guide to Finding Fishing Spots. In this episode, we're going to go over several areas of the basics of what you need to do to find fishing spots so that you can get out on the water and have a productive day catching fish. Before we get into this though, if you want to learn more about fishing, grow as an angler, or just see some great and exciting offshore fishing adventures, you can start by hitting the subscribe button. Don't forget to turn on the notification bell so that you won't miss a thing. Alright folks, so I'm going to start out by stating the obvious. Finding good fishing spots takes persistence and dedication. But more than that, we can use a little bit of technology and some good old-fashioned know-how to help us out when it comes to finding fishing spots. First and foremost is you're going to need to know what you're fishing for. Are you fishing for snappers and groupers? Are you fishing for king mackerels and wahoo? Are you fishing for tuna? Are you fishing for tilefish? All these different species have different areas where they'll be found, which will be your fishing spots. And on top of knowing what species you're going for, you have to know what type of fishing you're going to be doing for them. Are you going to be trolling? Are you going to be bottom fishing? Are you going to be jigging? Are you going to be deep dropping? Of course, different species have different types of fishing you can do. For example, if we're going for yellowtail snapper, we're going to be anchored up on a reef, and we're going to be chumming and drifting out baits into the chum line. If we're going for mutton snapper, we're more than likely going to be drifting out a little deeper or jigging out a little bit deeper over structures. You can also catch mutton snapper at certain times of the year on the troll and shallow reefs. If you're going for pelagics like kingfish, wahoo, and tuna, you're more than likely going to want to be trolling or live baiting for these fish. And if you're going for fish like tilefish, you're going to want to be deep dropping. Okay, so if we're talking about finding fishing spots in its most rawest form, you're going to need to know how to use your electronics. That being your GPS, and your fish finder. Now most GPS units come preloaded with what is considered public numbers for certain fishing and diving spots. Most of these being shallow wrecks and reefs. So that makes part of finding these fishing spots easy. Pan around on your GPS's screen. You can find a wreck or a reef that you would like to go to. You can mark that spot as a waypoint. Then you will go to your waypoints. You will hit navigate to. Your GPS will draw a straight line from where your boat is located to that destination point. Now, does this mean you're automatically going to find a wreck just because you put a mark on it and it's a public number? No, it doesn't. You're more than likely going to have to use your fish finder and drive around a little bit until you find it. If it's a wreck, once you go over it, you will see the relief structure come up and you'll be like, I found it. The same thing with reefs. If you're going to a reef that is a public number, you go there and you look for some structure that you think looks rather fishy. When you're on reefs, you're going to want to look for sharp ledges where fish can hide under. Or you'll want to look for the very outer edge of the reef that leads into the sand where the predators will come in to feed. Now let's say you're not real happy with the preloaded numbers that your GPS comes with. A great source on the internet for finding fishing spots is on the FWC's website. This website gives you detailed GPS coordinates for literally thousands of wrecks and reefs up and down Florida's east and west coast. Now the issue with this website is these GPS coordinates. They have a column on the right hand side of the page that sort of details how high the accuracy is of the GPS coordinate they're giving you. Some of them are low, some of them are medium, and some of them are high accuracy. The higher the accuracy, the more likely you are to find that structure. Reefs, of course, are not vast areas, but they're areas that are general. So they're easier to find than, let's say, a smaller sized wreck, like a tugboat. Okay, so now you've got this website and your GPS and your fish finder, and you've got some tools to start finding fishing spots. You say, okay, well that's great and all, but what about these secret spots that every fisherman has? How do I gain knowledge like that? Well, if you're lucky enough, you might have a fishing buddy that will share a spot or two with you. I can tell you most definitely charter fishermen and professionals are very rarely, if ever, going to share any information with you. They won't. And to be honest with you, that's more than likely why you ended up at this video. So another great tool that has come into play lately for finding fishing spots is what's called seafloor mapping. And the big question has come to be, hey, is seafloor mapping worth the investment? Most definitely. So you have different companies that offer different seafloor mapping for different manufacturers of different GPS units. You've got Navionics, which works with Garmin. You've got Seymour Mapping, which works with Simrad and Raymarine and a few others. And what this product is it's an upgrade to your current GPS from your standard settings. You order a section of mapping from these companies and they send you a micro SD chip. You put it into your GPS unit and it downloads the information and it ends up right up on your screen. Seafloor mapping is very accurate. So let's say you've got GPS unit that isn't compatible with a micro SD download. Well, there is a company called Strike Lines and they have seafloor mapping that you can download onto your phone. I personally have tested it out and it works great. And you can see in this example right here that I'm heading offshore and my boat is being tracked. This is literally a screen recording from my cell phone that I was using to track where I was going. Just to show for an example. Seafloor mapping is going to take your fish finding spot game to the next level. It's very accurate. It's going to help you find little rock piles. It helps you find wrecks to exactly where they are because it's been mapped. It's not contour lines and bathymetry that is on a GPS that's got some GPS coordinate numbers that's guessing. No, this is an exact map of the seafloor. What you see is what you get. And now not every inch of the seafloor is mapped too. So if you're heading way offshore to, let's say, do deep dropping and find those spots, you're going to have to know what to look for on your GPS. And at the same time, let's say you're deep dropping for tilefish, which is located in mud, you have to know what type of ground to look for on your fish finder. And that again goes with the practice of finding fish spots. You learn more about what you are looking for in the habitat of what specific fish you are trying to find. Okay, so now let's do a few examples on the nice whiteboard right here. First thing we're going to do is we're going to go over a little bit of bottom fishing on the reef. Let's say we're going for snappers, yellowtails that'll swim up in your chum line. Maybe even a mutton snapper or a cobia swim up into our chum line if we're lucky. Also mackerel. You know, and that's just a few of the species you're going to get that wander up into your chum line that are some of more of the desirable fish that we're looking for when we're reef fishing. Let's just say we're going to split our screen. So on our GPS, we'll see reef structures that's actual relief. Let's say we're around 30 feet here and we're around 50 feet at the edge of it, where it starts to meet sand and rock. Then on our GPS, we're going to start seeing lines. More than likely, we'll start seeing tightly packed in lines, and then our lines will start spreading out further. These structures right here are coral heads. They're defined. They were able to actually get that definition on the bathymetry of your GPS. Then once you start hitting the sand and the rock, it turns into these lines. These are contour lines. So, tightly packed contour lines, your ground is going at more of a sharper descent. When your contour lines start getting spread further out, your ground is not going at such a sharp descent. It's more like leveling out. If we are hovering over here and we're heading out to sea, we got about 50 here. We say we got a sort of a nice drop off here down to about 90, and then out here will be around 150, right? If we are over these structures and we're fishing on our fish finder, we can expect to see some nice maybe ledges and relief structure on our fish finder. And over here, you know, we could say we'll be at 30 feet and 50 feet. So, you know, the top of your structures are here, and here you've got a nice like 10-foot ledge. That's an area where you might consider fishing. It's a, like I said earlier, it's a ledge. That's where fish are going to congregate. The little bait fish are going to hide, and the predators are going to come in to eat them. Out here so much, you're not going to really see any defined structure like that. You will maybe see a little bit, but it's more than likely going to look like that on your GPS. Now, if your boat is going fast, it is going to look like a sharp drop-off. The slower you go, the less of a drop-off it will look like, and the more of the reality of how much of a descent it's giving you. So, if we're reef fishing, we are definitely going to want to try the edge of the reef and the deeper drop-off area where it would be. This is definitely snapper yellowtail area. The mackerels will also come up in from the deep going into there. Now, I'm not saying don't fish these shallower areas, especially if you've got a good area where you've got some nice ledges. You can always try that. From my experience, if you're going for fish like yellowtail, grouper, mutton snapper, you want to try the outer edges of these reefs. You're not going to get yellowtail snapper out much deeper than 90 feet. Now, if you're going for mutton snapper, let's say you're drifting, then you're going to want to head out deeper. So once you get out to around 200 feet off the South Florida coast, your contour lines again start packing in. So that here we're at about 200. And at the bottom of our third reef, we're at about 300. Out there in those areas, drifting. You want to do jigging. You want to do live baiting. You want to do trolling. So off the South Florida coast, these are our defined reefs. What you have to do is you have to find areas where the fish congregate. Just because it's part of the reef system doesn't necessarily mean there's going to be fish there. You've got to travel up and down it quite a bit and find where the fish are. Alright, and so another way to find fishing spots when it comes to using your GPS. Let's say our reef is up here at 70 feet. Let's say we start to see a line, and they start to kind of get closer and build up almost a sort of outer ledge that almost looks like a mountainous area. Drifting, slow pitch jigging, live baiting, off of areas that swoop out, that aren't necessarily just a straight run of the reef, where you've got some actual definition. Those areas out deeper in the, let's say, 200 to 250 area, these areas of definition on the reef, way out deep, those areas tend to hold fish either on the top of your descent or at the bottom. You just have to fish it. But when you see areas like this, as you're going over the reef out deeper, you'll definitely want to consider giving them a shot. Alright, so let's say, hey, we want to troll. But how do we find a fishing spot for trolling? Now, first and foremost, let's say we want to head out and find dolphin. Well, there's really no spots to find dolphin. They're usually under forms of life like seaweed, floating debris, or birds offshore. However, there are spots offshore where pelagic fish will tend to congregate because you have not necessarily structure, but you have continental shelves and ledges where they will form current breaks in the ocean. I know off the South Florida coast there's an area that's from about 550 feet to about 650 feet where again we have those contour lines that start bunching up together and you have a sort of descent. It's like a closer in continental shelf. Trolling over the reef, we can figure that out. Let's say we want to go for kingfish and wahoo, maybe some tuna. Trolling the reef, you do have fishing spots. Where the fish are going to be because they move, well, if you know how to troll the reef, it'll help you out. The reef is your fishing spot. So again, we've got our contour lines. So here we're at about 70 feet, here we're at about 90, buck 50, 200, and down here we're at about 300. Okay, so these are your three sections of your reef. These are your trolling areas if you're looking for a spot to troll, an actual fishing spot. Of course, let's say, hey, over here we've got a wreck, or a barge or something that's down there. down at around 120 feet. Of course, you're going to want to try and troll over that. If you're trolling these areas, you just want to head with your boat in and out of these reef sections. You don't want to go real shallow, because trolling in real shallow is more of a Florida Keys thing, not a mainland Southeast Florida thing. However, if you're down in the Keys, trolling to patch reefs is a real thing. You can actually see the patch reefs, and you can troll right along the ledge of them between the outer edge and the sand. You can pick up great fish like barracuda, mutton snapper, cirro mackerel. You can even troll up yellowtail down there. But let's go back to this area of what our outer edge is right out front. Say Hillsborough Inlet, Boca Inlet, Port Everglades. You've got areas like this. This is your first reef, your second reef, your third reef. Troll in and out. Planer trolling up on top. You're going to catch those king mackerel. You'll get some barracuda. You'll get false albacore. You will run into wahoo out in the deeper area. So if we're talking specifically what fish are where, up in this 70, 80, out to about 150 is where you're going to get your kingfish and your barracuda trolling. Out and about between 150 and 300 is your wahoo and your tuna area. False albacore are everywhere in here. And that's just a little bit about trolling and how to find a fishing spot. Okay, so now let's say we want to fish a wreck. Maybe drop out a mutton rig. Or let's say we want to do some jigging, or even drop out a live bait, maybe let out a live bait on a balloon. But we want to fish a wreck. Let's say we've got a wreck here. This is, we're going to call this the Hydro. The Hydro Atlantic barge is a 300-foot barge that's been there for quite a while. It is just east, about 1.5 miles of Boca Inlet, just to the south. First, you want to find your wreck. You see it on your fish finder. You're going to see a giant relief structure. What you're going to want to do is try different things. Let's figure out which way our drift is. So let's say our drift is going this way. So the first thing we could do is we could start up current of our drift, park our boat, and just drift and let our lines out. See if there are fish over, in this area. The thing about fishing wrecks is fish are sometimes here, sometimes here, here, here. And then again, sometimes they're not there. I can tell you on this specific wreck, after like 9 o'clock in the morning, the fish tend to die off and stop biting. Let's say we started our drift here. We didn't get no bites. Okay, well, maybe we can start our drift here, start drifting back, and once we get to the tail end, we drop our lines, we start jigging, or we start dropping out our frozen baits, fresh baits, live baits. See if we get the hookup, see if the fish are hanging out back here. Or if we've got this and we're not letting out baits ever directly over the structure. We don't want to hook the wreck. But can we manage to get close enough over the sand and drift right along it? So wreck fishing is very productive, but you've got to find where the fish are. They're not necessarily everywhere over the wreck. And so the last area I sort of want to touch on a little bit is deep dropping for tilefish. Tilefish are out in mud. You're not going to find mud, you're not going to find tilefish spots on mapped areas anywhere. They're just not mapped, and there's nothing to see anyway. What you will see is on your bathymetry, you'll see these lines. And then you'll start seeing bigger open areas of your lines. Now depending upon what tilefish you're looking for, depends upon how deep you're going. Okay, so here's the facts about where you find blue line tilefish, also known as gray tilefish. They are in between 400 and 600 feet. And now if you're looking for golden tilefish, those big monster golden tilefish, they're found between 700 and about 850 feet. So back to our GPS in trying to find tilefish areas. These areas right here where you don't have really compact together lines could be areas of mud. Now what you're looking for to find mud is you're going to look at your fish finder, and your fish finder will have a solid color if you are over harder ground. So your fish finder sends a signal down to the ground and it returns. If it is hard ground, it will return a solid color. If it is softer, mushier ground, it will return a sort of pattern of colors. So let's say your hardest return is red, and then it fades out into yellows and greens and blues. So let's say you're over in here and you're getting reds. over in here, and then you move over into here, and your bottom starts looking more like a mixture of pixels of reds, yellows, greens, some blues in there. That is more than likely mud, and that's an area where you'll want to try for your tilefish. All right, and so in closing, finding fishing spots, like I said, is a lot of research and discovery. When you find a spot that you like, look back at the coastline. Do you see any landmarks that you can line up? Maybe a church steeple that lines up over a building somewhere specifically. Anything that you can go, okay, hey, I'm on this spot, I remember that. Because sometimes your fishing spot isn't anything you're going to see on your fish finder. Or let's say you did mark a small rock pile out in like 180 feet or something like that, but your spot that's marked, your waypoint on your GPS, isn't very accurate. Look at your coastline. Do you see any landmarks that you can use? Are you close enough to see landmarks? And if you don't, be sure to mark it again on your GPS so that you can have an accurate waypoint reading. Alright folks, that about does it for this episode. Hope you had fun, hope you enjoyed. I hope you learned a little bit about the process and the dedication it takes to finding fishing spots. Till next time, South Florida saltwater fishing, going wherever the cool wind takes us.